This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If this video helps, please consider subscribing and buying through our links, or even better, become a member on YouTube or Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to video review shorts as we test gear, along with a lot of other perks. So thanks for watching, and I hope this review helps. Welcome to the Good Ride review of the Nidecker Escape Plus, a high-end version of the all-mountain Escape you see next to it, and kind of a brother to the Thruster that you see next to it there. I'm James Beastie, and thanks for being here. I rode this primarily with the Union Atlas and the Burton Kendos, but got it on some other bindings as well, like the Supramatic, and compared it against the Escape. Every time I rode this, I put Union Atlas on the Escape too, just to compare it, and same thing with the Thruster, so I could see how all three of these boards compared against one another. I did compare it against other boards as well, like the S Basic on ink, the S Standard on ink, the Capita Black Snowboard of Death. I also compared this against the Alpha and the Alpha APX from the Nidecker group as well. I got this in decent powder, good groomers, and a little bit of stuff in between. To give you a short summary, this is old school camber. It has a little more setback than your average all mountain board to compensate for that. It has a little better construction and overall pop and feel than the Escape, and it's almost there with the Thruster construction wise, but doesn't quite feel there as well. But it's a hard carving, poppy, dynamic board that doesn't feel like a plus model to me. Yeah, it's a little more poppy. It has a little more chatter in some situations than the Escape, but overall, it's still a great all conditions ride. And if you're somebody like me that doesn't usually vibe with plus boards because you're a little too heavy for them, or you ride in all kinds of conditions and you want something a little better when it's uneven, this is going to be fine. I was really impressed with how the Escape Plus handled my weight and uneven conditions. So overall, very good, technical, all mountain board with a good bit of setback and a touch of taper. Now, when it comes to sizing, I'd probably go 56 with the Escape Plus, because the 59 was just a little too wide for my size 9 boots. While I could turn it no problem, it handled my weight no problem, I would just like a little faster turn initiation and to be able to throw this around a little easier. With me, if I'm in doubt, I always go for what best fits my boot size versus what best fits my weight, and I'll deal with the consequences that way. And with this handled my weight well enough at a 59 to where I think I could handle a 56 no problem and not be too heavy for it. And all these boards, I felt like I would love to size down one size and have a better fit for my boots. Now, when it comes to shape, this is just slightly tapered, like 2 mil taper. You don't even feel it. You can drive hard off your front foot. You can drive through a turn centered, and you can lean back into this and drive off the tail, and it didn't feel very washy, even in comparison to double enders, true twins. It feels fine. The Thruster, I felt, was just a touch more tapered, but again, it's right there with the Escape where you don't really feel it. The Camber profile, though, is locked in and technical. This is just pretty much full camber. Right before this review, I laid it back down on the table again and gave it a really close stare at the tip and tail. And just the Escape and the Escape Plus are pretty much full camber. So advanced to expert riders, this reminds me of the old days when everything was full camber and there was no early rise, just longer noses. This is like back in the day kind of style, and it has like a lot of setback on board for something that's almost not tapered. But even so, it doesn't feel like super setback and directional like a lot of free ride boards. This definitely feels all mountain. One thing to say about Camber though is it tracks so well one footing, flat basing. If you got a long flat cat track, it just cruises down. You don't have to kind of lean on edge a little bit. This just goes. The edge hold is pretty good here. I would say it's like not like those ultra disrupted side cuts that are great in hard to icy snow. But when I got into some hard snow patches with this, I didn't feel like I was going to lose my edge and it was going to wash out and I was going to fall. So pretty competent in hard snow. All conditions you want to ride, you just have to dial back your turns a little bit. Conversely, it doesn't grab at all in softer snow and it feels good there. And all these boards felt that way. The thruster felt maybe a touch washy in the nose because of the lifted sides, but overall, very good board. And all three of these are very consistent in all conditions with good grip. Now, let's talk flex here. This is a pretty stiff board for an all mountain board. It definitely has kind of a medium stiff to stiff flex between the feet, and then a little more give in the tip and tail. The nose is soft, but nothing like the thruster. The thruster is much softer there. The tail is stiffer than the nose by just a little bit, it seems like. At least with the board I have, because wood changes from board to board. Compare that to the regular Escape, and you can see there's just a little bit softer flex. Not by much, but it's noticeable. Nose has that give. A little more than the tail. But this tail seems to have just a little more give than the tail of the Plus. But again, it could vary from board to board. And here's a quickie with the thruster. Here's a quick thrust. But you can see the tip and tail, especially this nose, just gives more than the other boards. And the tail gives a little more. But the center is a little stiffer than the Escape, it seems like, and the Escape Plus. It's got just a little more stiff flex here, but a little softer in the nose and tail. So as long as I stayed on my game and was feeling good, this Escape Plus was down for anything pop-wise and really had good energy and good spring, definitely more so than the Escape. But right there with the thruster I felt had easily accessible pop. I could pop that a little easier, probably because of the softer tip and tail, but this is no slouch either. And I just love the way this popped. A little more work to butter, but that's full camber for you. It takes a really strong technical rider to really engage that flex and get it to do what you want it to do. But in terms of uneven snow and how this flex personality handles that, I was impressed. This Plus does a much better job than almost any other Plus board I've tried, maybe other than the ultralight, because that's another, like, you know, high-end version of the Megalight, and that did a good job in uneven snow too. It's a little more poppy. It can buck just a touch more than the Escape. The Escape feels better in all conditions, definitely, but it's very close, and I could easily ride this all day and not be bummed at the end of the day when it's messy, bucky, and bouncy. It did a good job. Wasn't quite there with the thruster. That's a little better in all conditions, especially like micro bumpy snow, but there's a lot less clown shoe effect than the thruster because that softer nose does chatter a little bit. None of these boards pass it up and into your joints, and I like that. So as long as you just act accordingly in the conditions you're riding, mellow it out a little bit when it gets more uneven, you'll be fine. Now, when it comes to pointing it, all three of these boards are great. It's really hard to say which one's the fastest. I think it's any given day, but I liked the more stable, slightly wider nose and tail of the thruster versus the Escape Plus. But I like the nose and tail, the stiffer nose and tail of the Escape Plus. So I think it really just comes down to personal preference, but I think this is the stiffest of the three. So probably in perfect conditions, this will bomb the best and feel the best for most, but I personally just did a little better with the thruster for some reason, but it's so close. It's like, don't even factor that in. And when it comes to bass glide, I thought the Escape Plus definitely had better bass glide than the Escape, and it felt like close to the thruster, but the thruster seemed to have the easiest get up and go. All three were waxed with the same wax at the same time, but you know, you never know. Never know for sure. Conditions could change and become slightly slower than they were before and make you think one board's slower than the other. So overall though, nice bass glide. When it comes to turn initiation, all three of these boards felt a little slow for me because I'm a size 9 boot with a 25/8 waist, and it's not a super deep turny side cut. It's not a lot of taper. So the turn initiation was like medium-ish for me, but if I was on a 56, I would say this is medium fast, and if you match up appropriately to your boot size, it'll be medium fast, and I felt like I got where I needed to go when I needed to get there. When I got the edge committed, having that full camber feel underfoot with that balanced side cut radius just really gave a strong spring out of the turn, and it was so satisfying going out on good groomers and really just laying into a turn with these. There's something fun about going out on a non-tapered board and kind of weighting yourself a little more centered and just driving through a turn. I really like that feel. The Escape was no slouch either. The thruster was great too, but the Escape Plus gave me the most satisfying turning experience out of all these. I could go across the groomers, I could go down the line. Just that balanced turning radius just allowed me to do anything from, and even do a circle carve and do an across the groomer carve, no problem. It just, you know, really didn't shine in any one type of turning radius, just applicable to all types of turns, and has that fun camber spring out of the turn, so this just rails. And when it comes to powder, you know, when I tested it against some of the better all mountain boards that have really good directional float, like my Yes Basic Unink 158, that's a good bit narrower than these boards. And I thought the setback on board with these, the extra setback on board, I think it's like 3 inches with this versus 2.25 with my Yes Basic Unink. I rode all three of these and then got on the Basic Unink and the Standard Unink the same day in a powder day. I did a powder sampler, which I just love doing. It's so good to compare other boards this way and understand what the board's doing. I felt that these were good, but they felt old school camber. And when I got on the Standard Unink and the Basic Unink, I just had better directional float, easier float, less rear leg burn. But still, if you like that technical camber feel in powder, you like the pop you can get from full camber in powder, and you know how to keep your speed and plane, this is going to be not bad at all. I like the thruster of the three the best because of the lifted sides. It just didn't feel like it floated that much better than the Escape Plus, but it just enhances the turning experience. I just felt like I flowed better and turned better in powder with the thruster versus the Escape Plus. The Escape only has 5x2 inserts instead of 6x2 per foot, and it just doesn't have as much setback on board, so this felt like the most work out of all three of these. But all three of these were better than the Black Snowboard of Death when it came to directional float and powder, better than the Mercury and the Mega Mercury and a lot of other all mountain boards. It wasn't quite there with the High Path though. That had a little better directional float. Now, when it comes to switch riding, even though this has a good bit of setback on side cut, it still has a very like centered feel, and you can take it either direction and it's fine. I'm not some amazing switch rider, but I sure did feel good throwing it around switch after a carve and then trying to turn switch for a little bit before I threw it back around and went back to stronger turning, you know, one way. And I like that. And it has a good feel for those who want to just hit a big kicker. This is a great board for that because it's stiff, it's aggressive. It has a good side cut that tracks well into jumps. So good for those of you who know really how to send it. And if you're somebody like me who the butter's off the popcorn and you're done with that kind of thing, you'll still be happy micro jumping like I do, hitting small kickers throughout the mountain. Wouldn't be a bad pipe board in a 56 too. I'd love to take this in the pipe. I like camber boards like this, slightly directional camber boards that aren't too wide in the pipe. These are super fun. So overall, I really like the fact that this has a plus name, but not that ultra chattery, bucky, bouncy plus feel. And it did a really good job for my specs. And I don't think it has a real wide appeal like some all mountain boards do, because it's not that forgiving. But if you like an old school camber ride and you want decent directional float for a full camber ride, you've got the Escape Plus, and I liked it a little more than the Escape, and just about the same or almost as much as the Thruster.